This is Notorious POD, the podcast for the best informed people in the real estate industry. Rob Hahn is your host, and Notorious is where the real estate industry comes for real talk with no bullshit.
Hey everybody, welcome to Musings. So first one, I think since I redid my stream a little bit, or not stream, my podcast a little bit with help from professionals. So we'll see how this goes. But so I haven't done a Musings in a little bit, but I do think that the quality of the Notorious pod has gone up quite a bit. So I'm pretty happy about that. Let me know if you agree or disagree, or if there's things that I could do better on the sort of the interview style Notorious pod. But I thought about like what topic do I want to do. I tried looking for like a happy topic, because I understand, there's a little bit of a doom porn type flavor to a lot of my stuff. But unfortunately, the news that hit that I think deserves some thinking about is not real happy. But having said that, let's go through it and just kind of talk about this. So a friend of mine who's also, a reader or listener, sent me this news that California, there's an assemblyman, state lawmaker, who has proposed a new bill that would impose a 25% tax on capital gains on what he calls house flippers, right? And there's a video here. I don't think we're going to watch it together because, most of it is in this text here. But here we go. So let me try and make this a little larger. Okay. Hopefully you could see that. Let's zoom in a bit. Whoop. All right, zoom in a bit so we can see it. All right, so this is from CBS 8. According to them, a state lawmaker from San Diego says short-term investor contributing to the housing crisis. Now he's introduced a bill he will say give average people chance to own a home again. Really? All right. But in any event, so there's an Assembly Bill 1771 that will impose an additional 25% tax on the gain from sale of homes within 3 years, is according to him, right? And there's a lot of stuff that went on, et cetera, et cetera. And then they try to bring in like an alternative view that said, this is going to help, but California tax laws are still more favorable to investors, so therefore it's probably not going to help. I gather, and this is a professor, University of San Diego real estate professor Norm Miller, says even with this, you still have a depreciation that an owner doesn't get, so therefore it still advantages them. I would assume he would want something a lot harder, a lot tougher. Okay. Look, so before we even get into like, is this a good idea? Is this a bad idea? A couple points here. One is, in previous, posts and previous musings, I've talked about how we're going to see legislators, regulators, we're going to see the government act, because housing is a real political issue, and it's very clear by, sort of legislation like this one. And the feeling, I think, out there in the public is that they can't afford to buy houses because home prices have gone absolutely insane. Last year, I think we're posting like 19% year-over-year returns. Wages certainly haven't done that. So people are really feeling like they're no longer able to buy houses. And the easiest target for something like that are institutional investors, right? And again, I think I talked about this when I looked at the Senate hearing around this, the federal U.S. Senate hearing on this. But when that was happening, I said, look, this is just a real easy, low-hanging fruit politically. We're going to see politicians, we're going to see the government come in and make proposals and do things going after institutional investors. So here's an example of that. House flippers. Clearly, they have in mind institutional investors, but even if you're, an individual, if you're a flipper, if you're a dirty flipper, then guess what? They want to tax the living shit out of you. But here's where I got kind of interested. Okay, so that's a new build. Here's a new story. I don't trust corporate press, so therefore let me actually go look at the bill. So this is the text of the bill. We are seriously not going to look at this in real detail because it's, legislation. And honestly, man, like I'm just doing this, maybe for fun and for education, self-education. So I'm not about to go and cross-reference all the things and really figure out what this bill says. If you happen to know, maybe you're a lobbyist in California, maybe you're with CAR, let me know. I'd be happy to, have you kind of really explain what this is. But here's what's interesting. So first of all, um, this. Let me highlight this. But here's what it says for people who are just listening. So there's a finding, right? So bills there's typically like this preface, and there's like, we found this, and therefore we need to do this bill. So the legislature finds and declares that according to CAR, California Associated Realtors Quarterly Index, California's median price for single family home increased 17% to $814,580 in the third quarter of 2021. Near record lows of 42% of Californians could meet home buying qualification standards. Price of condos and townhomes are all-time high, average of $620,000 in November of 2021, or 19.2% over 12 months. Couple of points. That $814,000 is from Q3. We already know Q4, and especially December, nationally, it was like 19% year over year. Meaning, as of today, I'm betting that the median price for a single family home in California is significantly more than $814,000. So that's point number one. So let's call it like 8.25. Maybe it's 850,000. It's going to be more than 814, right? Number one. Okay. During the same period, market analysis estimates investor buyers represent approximately 51% of sales in Southern California compared to a national average of 18%. Well, when the median price is 800,000 change, okay, but keep it there. So, and et cetera, they want to individual home buyers find increasingly difficult. Yes, of course, because competing with cash sucks if you have to borrow money, etc. So what they want to do is obviously tax the crap out of investors. All right. And the finding is that short-term speculative transactions allowed unchecked contribute significantly to higher housing costs for all and has negative social and economic consequences. Reasonable control mechanisms should be enacted to discourage real estate as a short-term equity gain mechanism by capturing excessive property value increases, thereby increasing the risk to investors and redirecting interest from investing in real estate to investment in other assets, blah, blah, blah. Funds generated should be redirected to local government, schools, etc. So if you read the bill, here's what where I start to kind of fail to understand. All right. So number one, it says capital gains tax. What it says is, in addition to any other tax, additional tax of 25% on capital gains of sale of homes. Okay. And then this 25% will be reduced as follows. Tax shall be reduced by 20% if the sale or exchange of the qualified asset, namely real estate, occurred 3.01 to 4 years inclusive after the initial purchase. So in the news story, what we heard is if you were to flip a home within 3 years of owning it, you pay 25%. The implication is if you sell it after the 3 years, you don't pay this additional 25%. Well, the text of the bill seems to suggest that that's not what happens. You take the 25%, you decrease that by 20%, which I guess is 5%, right? If you sell after 3 years, but before 4 years. If you sell between 4 to 5 years, the tax is reduced by 40, 5 to 6 years reduced by 60, 6 to 7, 80. And then if you sell it, more than 7 years after, then 100% waived. That's I don't know if you could call that really a attack on flippers, right? Meaning if you bought a home and you sold it 6 years after, you're still paying an additional capital gains tax, right? It's 20% of the 25%. So you pay 5%. So are you still a flipper if you're selling a property that you bought, say 6 years after? I mean, I guess it's up to you whether you think that's a flipper or not. But it's just a straightforward capital gains tax is what I'm seeing here. They're calling it a flipper tax, but I'm like, but do flippers really hold on to homes for 3 years? At least most of the flippers I know, they buy a house, they fix it up, and they immediately want to sell it. So it's like 90 days later. I don't know that many that are holding on to a flip property for a year, never mind 3 years. But that's how they're talking about it. Then you read the bill, and it's like, actually, not so much, right? Oh, yeah, screw that. I don't want to hear from your video. So that's the first thing I think I would point out here is like if you read the bill, doesn't really feel like a flipper tax, just feels like a real estate capital gains tax. Again, maybe I'm misreading this. You tell me, but that's what it feels like to me. But the larger picture, I guess, is okay, you're doing this if you're this assemblyman, if California passes this. In theory, this is supposed to make it easier for people to buy houses because there'll be less competition, right? Investors would not be so interested in buying houses, so they won't bid. So more people will be able to come in and buy houses. Well, here's the thing. We just heard from the findings that the median price was $814,580 in Q3. Since home prices have gone up since Q3, probably pretty substantially, let's call it 8.25. Let's say the median house in California is 825,000. Well, what's the median income in California? Well, it turns out the median income in California is significantly higher than, sort of rest of the United States, but it's not that much higher, right? So according to Fred, the federal government, this is St. Louis Fed. They do, all this economic research. So according to Fred, in 2019, the median was 79,000 household income in California. And we'll go with household because per capita is even lower. It's like 31,000. But single people aren't typically buying houses. So we'll call it family, we'll call it households, fine. Median household income in 2019, 79.8. 2020 dropped to 77.3. We don't have data for 2021, but I mean, I don't think it went to 150,000, right? That probably didn't happen. So if the median income in California is around 77,000, the median home is like 8.25. Home prices are going up 19% a year. Median income's not going up by 19% a year, right? The question I had was, okay, so how long would it take for the median family that this bill is supposed to try and help instead of these, cash-rich investors? How long would it take for them to save up down payment? Well, so I looked at Investopedia. So according to Investopedia, the average savings by age group breakdown. And this is America, so maybe California is significantly higher. Grant, I'm not about to go figure out exactly what the hell's going on in California. But average transaction account balance. So this isn't necessarily like savings, but we'll go with it, right? This is what they're saying. So how do people's saving patterns work out in real life? 6 age groups used by the Federal Reserve Board. And those age groups are less than 35, 35 to 44, 45 to 54, 55 to 64, 65, 74, 75 and older. And according to this, 35 and under have $11,250. And I think this was in 2019, right? So before, COVID, before pandemic, who knows what these look like now. But less than 35, the average savings was $11,000. Okay. If the median price in California is 800,000, 8.25, assuming you want a 20% down payment, that's $160,000. If you're 35 and under, you have $11,000 in savings. What's it going to take for you to save up $150,000? So let's go to the Motley Fool. And they have an article called How Long Will It Take You to Save Your First $100,000? If you're starting from zero, path to 100, it seems like blah, blah, blah. So what they show you is if you are saving $100 a month at 5% annual return, it will take you 33 years to save $100,000. So an additional 50,000 on top of that, we're talking 30, 40 years. Okay, that's not going to work. So to get something reasonable and rational, we're looking at having to save $1,000 a month. And then you could save $100,000 in 7 years at 5% annual return, right? All right. So let's say I'm a median income earning 30-year-old in California. I make $75,000 a year, 77, something like that. I have to save $12,000 a year for 7 years in order to get enough to make a 20% down payment on a median home in California. Okay. Getting investors out of the market is going to do what? Getting flippers out is going to really help me do that? Again, maybe. I mean, I guess it can't hurt, right? But really? Because at the same time, what I started thinking about is, okay, so this hurts flippers. This hurts short-term investors. All right. Let's say I'm the people who were doing this flipping activity today. Let's say I'm the cash buyer. I come in and I pay $800,000 in cash to buy a house, fix it up. So put another, whatever, $100,000 into it to fix it up, to resell it. And then I'm going to get penalized 25% on the gains. Well, now my incentive then is not to fix it up, right? My incentive is to immediately turn it into a rental, long-term rental, right? And hold it for 7 years. Because then when I sell it, after 7 years of appreciation, I'm not going to get taxed as 25%. I'm not sure that, I mean, does that make an investor not want to invest in real estate in California? I mean, maybe it does because you just hate California. You think socialism is bad, and you think the government who's going to come after you like this, they'll figure something else out. But I'm just thinking about this like rationally, logically. Like I have investment real estate in Utah. Let's say for some reason I got a mental illness of some kind and decided I want to own rental real estate in California. Is this law going to stop me from doing that? I don't see it. I just don't see it. If I'm going to invest in rental property in California, it's not because I want to hold it for 3 years and then flip it. Because I'm going to hold it for 10. I'm going to hold it for 20. Right? I'm just going to hold on to it and just raise rents like crazy, assuming that, the state lets me do that, which, that's the reason. I just don't see what this bill is supposed to do. Like I apart from it just being state of California pretending like they want to go after short-term flippers, these evil flippers who are going to come in and pay cash and then fix up the place and then sell it for this enormous capital, enormous profits. Okay, well, if that's the case, then wouldn't we see it more like if you sell, within 1 year, we're going to tax you at 100%, like 6 months, 100%? This schedule here says to me this isn't really a flipper tax. This is more just a straightforward property gains tax. But I guess if you called it that, you're not going to have as many people supporting it, right? Because again, you're a homeowner, you bought your starter home. If you sell it in 5 years, you're going to pay an additional capital gains tax, right? 40% of 25%. So what is that, 10%? You're going to pay an additional 10% of whatever gains because under this law. I mean, does that still feel like a flipper tax? Right? And what will happen with this tax? This tax will go towards local governments, will go towards schools, it'll go towards, those types of things, more infrastructure. Sure it will. Yeah. Anyway, I wanted to share this with you guys and just think through this a bit. All right. If affordable housing, because that's one of the things they say, we're going to tax this and we're going to invest in affordable housing. Is this affordable housing rental? Now, who's building it? Who's owning it? And if they own it and they sell it within 7 years, then they have to face the additional capital gains tax. I don't know. The whole thing just doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Maybe my California friends have to tell me, more about like what they think, what they're seeing. It doesn't feel like this is going to help families in California buy because, again, we're talking about $800,000 as median price. against a median income of 77,000. Um, getting short-term investors out of the market. I guess it'll help. Is it really going to make things affordable? I don't know. I mean, how long is it going to take for you to save up $160,000? So fundamentally, I don't see how this really pushes affordability or, regular family access to housing. Um, simply because we're going to tax the shit out of short-term investors. And again, 3 years is not short-term to me. 3 years is significant. That's feels like longer term. All it's doing is creating an incentive for investors not to sell their property. What it's doing is creating an incentive for investors to hold onto the property and rent it out for as long as possible at a minimum of 7 years, and then sell it, and then you don't pay this capital gains tax. It does, but hey, that's government. That's the kind of ideas we tend to hear. I'm real curious, I guess, what CAR lobby thinks about this, because CAR is very, very powerful in the state of California. I suspect that they're against it, but I don't know. I suspect that they're against it. I don't know. I could see while in some markets, especially when investor activity is 51%, it becomes a problem. But fundamentally, when I think about it, again, because it's musings, I'm just trying to make sense of this. Man, if the median price is 800 grand, like the only people who could buy houses are rich people. I mean, let's be honest about that, right? And if that's really where we're at, if the median price to income in California is over 10, that's until you get that down to like 5, meaning homes have to lose either median price in California has to go down to about 400,000, or the median income in California has to go up to about 150,000, right? I mean, otherwise there's no families accessing housing bullshit going on. I mean, it just is what it is. Like, what am I missing? And I suspect that all the homeowners in California would really not want to see their homes go from 800,000 in value to 400,000, right? Which means what? The mystery of affordable housing, mystery of economics, I suppose, and reality. Anyway, I just thought I would record a short little something. I know it's not good news, but it's news. It's something. And I think what it really goes to show is a couple things. Nothing may happen with this bill. It's just a bill. It's not the law. It might not pass. But I do think it's interesting that they are proposing it. They're calling it something to help average families. But then when you read the fine print, it doesn't really sound like they're trying to help the average family. It sounds like it's just a tax revenue scheme. Because again, it's not 25% after 3 years when you sell 0. It's 25% after 3 years. It's 20%, and then so on and so forth. That's a straightforward just property tax. That's just, it is what it is. And it isn't as if there's a flip side, right? Like if you bought it and then you sold it at a loss, they're gonna give you money, like extra money. It's just nope. If you have a gain, they're going to take extra from you. God bless California. That's how I would say about that. Anyway, if you have any thoughts, if you have any questions, if you actually know more about this particular bill or what CAR stance might be, let me know. I'd love to hear from you. And with that, let me end this musings. Thanks, everybody. Ciao.